everybody. Thank you for holding space for us. I am the founder of Break Bread, Break Borders. It is a culinary training program developing training opportunities for refugee women from war-torn countries, and really sharing their powerful storytelling through food and culture, and break bread together with the communities and break down borders at the same time. So thanks.
Incredible. Thank you. Nadia Salibi is also with us today. Nadia is the Chief Program Officer for City Square, an amazing and close partner organization of DSM. And I would love for Nadia to introduce herself a little further as well.
Hi, everyone. Great to be with you here tonight. Yeah, so I have been at City Square for 4 years now as the Chief Program Officer. And at City Square, we address the causes and effects of poverty through health, housing, hunger, and hope. And in my role, I oversee all of our programming. My background has been primarily around evaluation for government agencies, nonprofits, and foundations that focus primarily around health disparities and social justice.
Amazing. And then also with us today, we have Dr. Latrice Totsch. Latrice is a phenomenal nurse practitioner and has about 1 million other letters and degrees behind her name as well, that I will let her tell you more about.
Thank you, Allison. My name is Latrice. I'm a nurse practitioner in the DFW area. I treat people of all walks of life, but am specifically passionate about creating a safe space for the LGBTQ community in that area. In addition to that, Allison, I have plenty of other things that I'm involved in, but specifically mentoring in the Dallas ISD for minority students to make sure that they get to college if that's their desire, and also some fundraising. I'm also a cycling instructor, so I do a lot of fundraising in that area to bring awareness and just create spaces for women in that space, and African American women specifically.
Amazing. Yes, if you've never been to a spin class, Latrice's are a great place to start. Her playlists are banging. Anyway, thank you for those brief introductions. I would love to talk first. When our initial panel meeting, the three of us had a really strong conversation about your individual names, and names being such a strong element of empowering. So I know I'm throwing a slight curveball at you here because it wasn't initially our first question, but would love to hear the history of your name and how names play into feeling empowered.
Nadia, you want to take this one and jump right in?
Sure. We did have a discussion around names and the sort of importance of, explaining and enunciating sort of our names in regards to how it might, obviously be a name that people do not as much commonly hear in some cases. So, for me, I'll just talk about myself. My name is, in my culture, oftentimes your name is be given from an elder, if you will, or someone from your family. And so my name is my grandmother's name. To be quite frank, Nadia is probably not of Arabic origin, but probably I want to say of Russian origin, and is more so, I would say, a global name. You hear it in numerous cultures, and the definition or the significance of it is really just the one term of hope. To be quite frank, I actually go by a nickname that everyone in my family has called me since I was a child, which is Cookie. And so that's the name that actually I feel the most comfortable with. All my childhood friends and so forth have called me that. It's very common to have nicknames from where I'm from too. So yeah, a name is a powerful tool, is what I'll say.
Yeah, I remember I was mispronouncing it because I did have that assumption. And I was so glad that when we were unpacking that, and you properly corrected me. And so So thank you for sharing that. Latrice, how about you? We had a really powerful conversation around your name.
We did. So my middle name is Latrice. So that's what mostly everyone that I know and I'm close with, that's what they call me. But my first name is Shankitha. And there's no particular origin to that. I mean, my family has pretty generic names. Mom is Kathy, brother is Michael, dad is Robert, and I got Shankitha. And and that's fine.
But great.
So, formally, of course, in all of my, documents, my writings, my degrees and everything definitely say that. But the conversation I'm assuming you mean is a kind of an interaction that I had with someone who told me that my name was not a resume name, meaning that's not what I should put on my resume because people would have some assumptions about who I was before I even stepped into the room. So that created an interesting conversation to follow.
Mm-hmm. Cookie and I were talking about that. About, and actually, in the performing arts space, we often hear about even just, those studies about women auditioning with high heels and not being able to get those positions if people heard that prior to them entering the room, whereas if they heard a man's Oxford stepping in, what those possibilities are. And so like our names are those introductions, right? It's like the first impression. And I still remember coming to America when I was 13. I grew up in Taipei, Taiwan, actually. And so my Chinese name it's actually Huang Jin-Ya. And Jing, actually, it's like a T and Z combination. It doesn't really exist in the English language. And so I just kind of picked, J, that was like the closest to it. And I hyphenated because, it's my middle name and the name that follows it. And so Huang actually means the color yellow. And Jin actually means pacifist, and Ya means sophisticated. And I don't know what my parents were thinking, but I'm really grateful that I've kind of fallen in this role, right? But the thing was, it was so challenging growing up here, going to middle school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and having teachers that, didn't know how to pronounce my name, and they would butcher it, from just calling me Jin and not Jin-Ya, and or Jin-Ya Huang, and it's like, no, it's Huang, there's a U in there. Pretend it's a W, anything, and like Nadia, I actually, really kind of went by Yaya growing up, because that's kind of the nickname, everybody gave me. And but that wasn't even possible. It was just, a lot of people mispronouncing things, and we got tired. And so my aunt actually decided to choose an American name for me. So in all my naturalization papers, I have the middle name of Melissa, and in Greek the word means honey, and I'm thankful for that she thinks my personality is fitting of that. I don't know why, but but I can kind of like periodically really figure out chronologically, if anybody called me by Melissa, I knew I've known them since middle school or high school. But if anybody actually knows me by Jin-Ya, that's actually people I've met actually college and beyond. And so it's really interesting that the history that comes along with it, and the assumptions that comes along with it. And and no matter how empowering the native language is, what those words mean, what we were named, it really got lost in translation coming here to America, and then also especially coming here to the South. And it really took a long time to educate people, to help them understand the culture and the heritage that came along with it. am I still battling people, like, pronouncing my name properly and, and deciding to shorten my name when, when they feel like it? Yes. But instead of getting tired, I just, I try to rustle up a little more energy because I know it's a necessary conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. A very different experience. Of course, my name is very Eurocentric, but I do joke that Allison Bret is my stage name because when I'm in a show, people will read it in a playbill and make the logical assumption that it's Bret instead of Bray. Thank you all for that. So you work in 3 relatively different fields, although there are some ties there. You're all kind of in the business of helping people. What does it look like in your individual fields to be a person who empowers women? Once again, starting off with an easy one, right?
I mean, go Latrice.
No, I was just going to say, just because what I do is so much of patient care, it's a lot about just having the discussions about how to empower yourself. I did have a young girl even just today who came in, first time seeing me, but regular routine, physical, but we had a lot of conversations about relationships, about, consent for sexual activity, how to care for yourself, even if you have decided to have a partner who is not making sure that they are checking on themselves, that it's really important for you to do so. And she was actually really receptive. So a lot of the empowerment that I have or that I try to work with women about is really about caring for yourself outside of everything else. A lot of self-care talk, a lot of, you can't really care for anyone else if you're not doing the same thing for yourself, and giving yourself that grace and that space to grow, because you need that in order to give to others.
I'll just chime in and say, I feel pretty fortunate in that I feel like I work with a lot of women, and I feel like a lot of them are empowered in a very positive way, and it's really great to see that. What I will say is when I'm working with other staff that are female, or even with our neighbors, we call the individuals we serve our neighbors who are women. I think the thing that comes most in forefront to my mind is just being assertive and stating what you want and what you feel, and that it's okay. I think oftentimes, especially amongst women, it's sort of taboo, and there's sort of these stereotypes of put on women on if they sort of state what they want or how they feel about something. And I just really encouraging that, and encouraging conversations where it's okay to not agree with other people and to state sort of your opinion in a very, sort of, proper way, if you will. So I think, just really trying to exemplify that through actions, and hoping that people see that in actions is probably the main area that I see most and that I kind of focus on around.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Latrice and Nadia were saying, we work with refugee women from war-torn countries, and oftentimes, from different parts of the world, there are different cultures that we have to honor and respect, right? And so when we decided to cook everyone's individual cuisines and not alter recipes, not alter ingredients, to pacify any sort of, Western need. And that in itself is, like Nadia was saying, is asserting that power. And also, like what Latrice was saying, is giving that individual the power to choose. And they did choose to obviously to cook, things that that if the client is requesting things to be gluten-free or nut-free, dairy-free, and but nothing is taste-free, and so we really wanted to work around those ideas and honor the culture and heritage. And definitely when we were starting out, we had women that actually had to ask their husbands and family members for permission to come and cook with us, and really valuing that opinion, when they were asked, are you getting paid? Are you getting compensated? Obviously they are, and earning those living wages, really validated their roles with us, that they're not just cooking with us, but they're cooking for themselves, and they're investing in their own future to in turn to invest in their own families and invest in the communities. And it's really about giving them the option and propping them up and giving them the power back. And we always joke that, everybody thought we were just cooking, but we were starting a revolution in the kitchen. And so that was the thing. It is something important, because we're building future leaders in the communities, and they have a lot of hopes and aspirations. And what we're doing is basically removing those barriers, so they can have access to success.
That's great. Fantastic. What a broad range of women and people you all touch. On another interesting note, all three of you are Dallas transplants. You haven't lived here your whole lives. And I would love to know, what is that experience like in Dallas specifically? Or do you feel that this idea of empowering women is necessary and vital to your work wherever you are?
Oof. Who wants to jump into that one first? I think
I will actually say I've lived here all my life, so I'll leave it up to them for this one.
I'm recalling a bit of what we talked about last time. I guess I would say the challenges that women face, I think, are going to be, regardless of the city they live in, are going to always be present on some level. But I know one thing we talked about briefly was how in Dallas, as being a transplant compared to some of our previous cities we lived in, it felt a bit isolating around finding your community, especially if you're an immigrant or someone from a specific culture or background. Even though it's a very diverse city, it just still seemed a bit isolating in making those connections. Where in other cities, it seemed much more easier to find those avenues to connect. And so it's this intersectionality of not just being a woman, but I think it's these other sort of factors around sort of your identity or who you are and the individuals that you're connecting with. Obviously, work is a common place to find people that oftentimes have your same values, depending on the type of workplace you're in. But going beyond just work, so that's been a bit of a challenge, I'll say, for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely ran into that. I think, growing up in Taiwan and Taipei, Taiwan, and then coming to Tulsa, Oklahoma, my parents really wanted us to acclimate. And so when my aunt and uncle had already been in the States, and they were starting a restaurant business, and so they wanted to do a Chinese version of McDonald's, and that's how the whole franchise started. That's how I got into the restaurant, the food service industry. And it was a rude awakening because, people wanted to come and have the food, but, whenever they were unhappy about the pricing or, anything else, they were perfectly fine telling us to go back to wherever the F we came from. And, and growing up as a language broker, it was really challenging for me because I don't want to translate that to my parents, and my sisters and I really struggled, being in that space, of customer service and wanting to deliver the best food, the healthiest option possible, yet encountering so much racism and sexism at the same time. You know, a lot of times they would say something to my dad, but not to my mom. And, and it was interesting being stuck in between and growing up in very, very white neighborhoods, because my parents thought that was going to help us somehow segregate ourselves from all the racism and sexism problems that we tried to, escape in East Asia. And that caste system, it doesn't matter where you go, there's no vaccines for that. And we just continue to see it, throughout the South. And, a part of it dissipated just because it's a little bit of a bigger city. My parents did see that, it was a little, Dallas definitely is a much more metropolitan city when it comes to, being a little more progressive in certain areas. But still, it took me a long time after college. I actually got into advertising as a creative and as my day gig to kind of, make ends meet. And that space definitely did not have a whole lot of women of color, especially Asian American women. And so typically there were no art directors in that space. And, the Asian women I was really running into was mostly manicurist and maybe a hair and makeup, maybe a makeup artist. And but there were no art directors, in that space. And slowly but surely, they were hiring more Asian models, but they were never paid the same. Black girls and Asian girls were never paid the same as much as the white girls. And we used to talk about, are you getting a really big girl, for a project? And that meant somebody that was Carly Kloss and, the level of, pulling in like 50 grand a day, as day rate kind of deal. But, the Asian American models we were working with and, were probably pulling in like maybe 6 to 10. And so there's a huge gender pay gap in that space. And so it was really hard to kind of work in corporate at that time, at Neiman's, Penny's and Fossil, and, having to deal with that kind of discrimination. And seeing what was happening in that space, we didn't want it to continue, and that was the thing. It really took us quite a while to kind of navigate around to find where are the other, women of color that are, interested in what I'm interested in. It's not just about fashion, but it's about social justice. It's not about just food, that's trendy, but, what is making impact, and really figuring out, whatever those paths are along the way, and not get stuck in, talking about things that we didn't care about, and so it took a while to find our tribe. But I'm really glad that there's quite a few, all y'all here are in that space with us. So thanks.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue, Jin-Ya. All three of you are women who are women of color with three very different identities and different intersectionalities that play into that. How does that play into, because I'm sure it's a how and not an if, being an ally for your fellow women? How does that alter your view of how you're a female advocate, knowing that you all have these many different identities and intersectionalities?
Latrice, do you want to go
now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is an interesting one. This is an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, Latrice, you self-stated check a lot of boxes on that list.
Yeah, check a lot of boxes. Oh man, I don't know how to approach this. So you want to know, tell me again what you want to know.
Yeah, I mean, how does being a person who has a lot of different identities affect the way that you approach this idea of female empowerment?
I think very carefully, very carefully, and with a lot of reflection, just to understand what someone else's perspective may be, so I can make sure that I'm being respectful. A lot of the work that I do, not necessarily in the clinic setting, but in the cycling setting, when I'm doing fundraising, or even just kind of like weekly or every 2-week classes, just to touch base, has a lot to do with who I am as a Black woman. Myself and a Black cycling instructor, we do a class called Hustle and Flow. So we make sure that we are very visible on our social media and putting out information that's really important for us as Black women, but we're also queer women. So we really try to make sure that when we are presenting our music or presenting our teachings during our class, that we are kind of integrating that in a way that is relatable to the people who are coming, because the people who are coming are, I mean, it's not like a sea of, people of color in the room. These are people, all walks of life. So just making sure that we are visible in a way that says we are here. We have something to say, and in that space, we only play Black artists. We focus on Black culture, and that's something that's really important to us in that space. So just very carefully making sure that we are putting out the right information, that we are putting out the information that's important to our community, and activism in whatever way that we see fit.
I
I
love
hope
what
that answered your
Latrice
question.
said. I was thinking as Latrice was talking, I would just add that I think it's having this sort of multiple identity layers, if you will. I think it expands your worldview. So as much as there's a lot of hurt that can come with that throughout the years of just things that you experience, whether it's being female, being a person of color, being an immigrant, being all speaking a different language, all the sort of things that you kind of grow up accumulating these emotions and feelings towards because of how you were treated. It makes you so much more aware, at least for me, I can speak for myself. It makes me so much more aware and self-conscious of others and how they feel. And so it allows you to be the person in the room often to think about, how can I empower this person who's likely maybe feeling all these things, and may not be, but you at least have that in your forefront of your mind to sort of at least check, and to at least address, and to at least be there and support that person. Where other people, if you don't have those experiences as maybe positive or negative as they may have been for you, or both, you may not even think to address those things, because it's just not your worldview. It's not your experience. You don't know it. You don't know to think it. So, I would say it's actually an amazing weapon, if you want to use that word, or tool, or just experience that you can really apply in your life.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that, Nadia, because when you and Latrice were talking, I was thinking about, how Latrice was so mindful about, playing only, Black, female, and queer people, creative music, and, and really creating that safe space and a really courageous space, to have that type of growth. We at Break Bread Break Borders, because my mom, when she was a chef, and how she used to train immigrants and refugees, to come and work in our kitchen and send them on to bigger and better opportunities, we knew it was important to like create that space also. And curating that space, takes a lot of courageousness, right? And so we reach out to other women of color, whether they're, from Trinidad, and, who is, from the LGBTQ community, and whether they're, African American, whether they're, Chinese American, whether they're, from Syria themselves, and, having businesses like, running a catering business, or a bakery business, or a restaurant. We have these, chefs and professionals, culinary consultants, come into the space and mentor the ladies that we cook with, so they can see that it's, it's possible. If she can do it, I can too. And that it's like, sending kids to Harvard so they can visit colleges and say, you know what, if these people can do it, you can too, and it really, being in that space, and having that kind of support, is, we intentionally create that, because it's how my mom was so mindful about it, and so we share that with the ladies, and really hope for bigger and better things. And, and when the ladies see me, they know that, I came from nothing, growing up in Taipei, Taiwan. Like, the reason why my parents took us from the South to the North was because my parents grew up in a little farming and merchant village, and my mom didn't have access to education. She barely got to finish 6th grade, elementary. And, her and my dad decided, long ago, that they were going to get us to a bigger place, so we can have access to education. And, I had to learn a different language, here coming to America. And I had to, work at the restaurant on weekends. I didn't go to homecoming, what's that dance called? I don't even know, like, I didn't even get I barely got, my friends had to accost my parents and say she has to go to prom. It wouldn't be an American experience if she doesn't go to prom, and so it's little things like that, when I talk about, my personal experiences, that, that they understand that, in Chinese, we call that somebody that is a 过来人, and that's not just somebody who is like, a passer through, but somebody who's been through. And so, and that's a huge difference, right? That I've been there, and I do understand. And if I can't understand, I can imagine. And so those are the things that, that we talk about, because, they know that, like, my father, grew up during the war, and, how he had to ration, and, was forced to speak Japanese, and, we lived under colonialism, and, and that my ancestors were refugees who escaped China from communism to take refuge in Taiwan. They know all that. And, and so it's a different understanding. And so when I speak in that space, I hope that they have a little more trust in me, and a little more hope with me as well.
That's lovely. I also now want a whole Hadestown style myth using that mindset of not passed through, but been through. That's so interesting. We have a couple of questions from the chat that I'd love to pull in. And if anyone else has any questions, we'll take them for the last few minutes of the panel here. Going back to the conversation about names, someone asked, do you feel it's important to correct folks on pronunciation of your name? And as business women, have you had difficulty because of your name?
It was interesting as we were talking about it. I was going to mention this, and then I saw the question come through. And this is often like, I know, like a critique of, or just a sort of labeling of women too, is like you feel bad, you don't want to inconvenience people, and so that's oftentimes like and my name isn't necessarily a hard name. It's that it's a little bit of a different pronunciation. So I just tend to say, no, that's fine, or even pronounce it wrong sometimes, or the way it's pronounced here, just to make people feel more comfortable. And so I battle within myself over, well, no, you shouldn't do that. You should really say it appropriately and make sure, but it's oftentimes just seems like a burden to other people. And so I often find myself just battling that and just kind of going along with however they pronounce it.
I used to put up with it, but I've gotten older and I don't care anymore. Say my name right or else. But just being a lot of times like the only Asian woman in the room, that's tough. And it over time, I've found people like, women of Asian descent since the Atlanta shooting. And then prior to that, I've joined a group of women called the Orchid Giving Circle, where Asian women get together to fundraise and really just from individually to different polls to help the Asian American communities. And it really started out as like 5 women dreaming of, what if we were not the same, like the only Asian people in the room, or the only Asian women in the room, or the only Asian American women in the room, what would that be? And so like just reimagining that space and, and not just like talk about it, but actually like walking it, is really important. And it's not just about like taking that power back, but also like changing the policies around it, because so much of it's systemic, right? And really like challenging that and dismantling that racism and sexism in between. I think that's the part that that it's been difficult to unpack with our names.
I used to not correct people as much, as consistently as I feel like I do now after I had that interaction with that person. For some reason, that was really impactful for me. And we discussed this. I mean, I was not only surprised that someone would, like, as you hear lately, say the quiet part out loud, but also because this, what was being said to me about my name was coming from a Black woman, which, we're here to talk about empowerment, talk about a situation where you were not being empowered by not only another woman, but another Black woman in a space where, I felt like no one could really come to my aid to say, this is inappropriate for you to carry on in this way. And it continued in other ways, things about the way that I speak, where I came from, it continued on. So it wasn't just one situation. So now I do find myself actually putting Shankita on more things, because I'm like, here we are. And also correcting people, not really outside of the clinic space, but inside of the clinic space, there's another Black provider, the medical director, there with me. And I actually get a lot of people who will come through and they will call me her name when we look nothing alike. So there's also a lot of correction there. No, I am this person and not this person. So, there are so many aspects of that.
I mean, that's like more than microaggression. That's like just like flat out racism of the interchangeable Black woman or the interchangeable Asian
Absolutely.
woman or interchangeable Arabic woman. Like, no,
Absolutely.
we are
Yeah,
not the same.
what I feel is what you were talking about, Latrice, like this concept of Orientalism, I have experienced so much in my life where the East is the East, and you are, if you are from that area, you're that person from all those different areas, and you're just kind of grouped. I mean, I've been called by my boss in previous jobs, by my boss, by a fellow colleague who is from somewhere else in Asia, just because we were, both brown. And so it's just, it's that sort of grouping, as you were saying, Jin-Ya. It's very, very pervasive.
Yeah, and I try to find the light and the hope in that, because I still remember I used to get this Chinese girl's mail all the time, and her name is Joyce Chang. And like, hello, there's nowhere near Jin-Ya Huang. And I would like walk the mail over to her and go, hey, in-office mail screwed up again, and it's effing, stupid. But here's your mail. And she worked in a total, I mean, she was actually another, person in advertising, and like, but she actually worked in a whole, different location. And through that, we actually started these conversations and ended up like friends for life. And so I have actually found a sister from another because of that horrendous experience. And so like, I hated every part of it and how long it went on, but it really kind of like helped us build this bond. And so
Wow.
trying to see the light.
I know. It's so interesting because I feel like people who have never experienced this have no idea what these things feel like when they're actually happening. So I'm glad that we're talking about it, and it kind of almost makes me think. I just bought this book, and I'm like halfway through, called Nice Racism. Have y'all seen this book?
Yes.
By Robin DiAngelo? And it's like everything that we've said here is in it. It's literally in the book about those microaggressions, what people do in their everyday lives that they don't clue in has something to do with your race, and it's racist in and of itself what you're doing, but people don't see it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. You're getting lots of love from the comments, specifically from the teachers saying, we love it when people correct us on our name pronunciations, which was exactly my experience too when I was in the classroom. I was like, please tell me how to pronounce this before I embarrass myself. But it's hard because I feel the same way, again, like in a very much smaller capacity with that Eurocentric name. It's hard in the moment to say, oh, actually it's Huang or Totsch or what have you. Another question we have about 10 minutes left, and this is like I said, another softball. How can someone who hasn't experienced those same things support you or show that they're an ally? Especially I'm curious, any thoughts on those really fleeting interactions we have, give someone at Chipotle or what have you. What can people do to show their support in those moments?
Well, Amy, by first like recognizing that and even asking the question, that right there is allyship. Thank you very much. Not assuming and actually asking the question in itself is tremendous. And then actively typing this question in is the action. Thank you for that. And so further holding yourself accountable is to continue to educate yourself. And, a part of that, I'm gonna, make this like point blank, is not asking us how you can be a better ally and how you can further act upon that, but holding yourself accountable and do the homework yourself. And, I've heard of this thing called Google. It's pretty awesome. And, so, sometimes when you hear, these amazing books like what Latrice is talking about, and, and even just, when Nadia is like, talking about how people lump, all places, like including the term even like Orientalism, like that is like something, I like to tell people that Orientals are for rugs and Asians are for people, and so it's like things like that, I may sound harsh, but it's really just like bottom line. You know, we really all have to step up and do our homework. And I'm not saying I know everything either. I have a ton of homework to do, you know, and you know, I have a lot to learn too, because there's so many things that, you know, throughout time that we have acquired as unconscious bias. And, you know, because we're making, you know, millions of decisions in milliseconds, right, every day. And there are things that our brain that tells us like, okay, this is going to make my life easier. Nope, that's a microaggression, that's racism, that's sexism, that's all the stuff in between that, you know, I should not commit on a daily basis, but I'm still making mistakes, you know, but thankful to you and everybody else in this room for being the brothers and sisters in our in the movement. This is how we're gonna, you know, collectively get together and find out whatever that interracial solidarity looks like.
Absolutely, absolutely. Everything you just said. I love it every time you talk. I'm like, yes, all of it, all of it. But it's interesting what you said about taking the time to educate yourself, because there's so much information out there. If you really just look for it, it's there. And you know, one thing about kind of reaching out to others to say, what can I do? Help me figure out what I can do. That in and of itself really puts a lot of stress and strain on, you know, not necessarily women in general, but people of color, you know, because you guys have heard some of the things that we're dealing with on a daily basis that we can't control. This is who we are. This is how we were born. This is the skin that we carry on in life with every single day. We can't control what someone has to say to us. We can't control those microaggressions, but we still carry those with us. So when we are also placed in a situation to have to educate people about how not to do those things, yes, I'm more than happy to talk you through a situation, but I definitely don't want to be the only person who's helping you through that. There are plenty of people that have years and years of education, studying, PhDs. That's not what my doctorate's in. That can help you through that. They've written plenty of books to help you. I had a friend this week that reached out that had a really sticky situation between a group of friends of hers. And essentially what seemed to happen from my perspective of it is that they I don't want to say discredited, because I don't know that that was the intention, but they took the energy and the attention off of the feelings of the Black person in the group. And then it became about like hurt feelings and defending the person with the hurt feelings, instead of kind of listening to the people of color who were saying, this is the situation that makes me feel most comfortable. And I appreciated that person reaching out to me, seeing something within me that they said, you know, I would feel comfortable having this discussion with Latrice, and I feel like she would be able to guide me through this. That's great. That's wonderful. And I appreciate it. And we had a really good discussion. They came to an understanding of what that may be like from the perspective of a Black person. But like I said, there's plenty of information out there to kind of learn more about interactions and what that needs to look like in order for everyone to feel validated, understood, and heard.
Yeah, and actually just to piggyback on that, there are a lot of incredible, depending on the space you're in, and you know, you may be in a leadership position or a part of an organization, whether it be, you know, nonprofit, corporate, NGO, whatnot. if you're interested in even learning further, not as only as an individual, but perhaps for your team and, you know, your organization, there are incredible DEI, you know, specialists out there who specialize in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you can literally hire them and compensate them. And, you know, and actually, if you're super intentional about it, hire the women of color in the space, right? You know, and I'm sure Allison has that list. Wait, I can blurt out, you know, 5 on off the top of my head that, you know, would be amazing, you know, to hire them to come in and really, like, you know, walk you through that process, and, you know, and pay them for it, you know, and because they're really, really well worth it. And that's the part that, you know, that you can make that that education like really mindful, you know, and so when you're doing the research and you're kind of exploring and things like that, that, you know, and kind of put those things, that the homework that you're doing on your own, on the right track. And so those are kind of, you know, some things that you may consider as well.
Yeah, that compensation for emotional labor is so important, such a large piece of this. Well, Amy, thank you for those questions. That was such a wonderful, concrete way to wrap up our conversation for the evening. I have put a whole bunch of resources in the chat to learn more about City Square and Nadia's work fighting the causes and effects of poverty. Please go ahead and click that website. To learn more about Jin-Ya and her work with Break Bread, Break Borders, that website links there too. And to take Latrice's Hustle and Flow class, which I feel like I want to get to ASAP, that link is in there as well. Felt a little bit stranger referring you to her as a patient. I also put in the link for Dallas Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation. They're an incredible, really local organization that are doing really wonderful diversity, equity, inclusion, and access work here in our city. That's a great resource. And then also I put in the link to sign up for our e-list here in the Education and Community Partnerships Department at DSM. That's linked a little bit further up, but I'll copy and paste it again. Our next panel will be on August 21st. That'll be with Dr. Francois Booker-Drew, who is the Director of Community Affairs for the State Fair of Texas. Syke Terry, who is the founder of UI Global Brands. For those who don't know, UI Global Brands was the first Black beauty care line to be in Target and Walgreens. So talk about paving the way. She's amazing. And then with Tatum Lau, who was originally the only senior city planner on staff here in Dallas. She has recently moved to Seattle, but will still be joining us for that panel. So if you want to sign up for those, go ahead and just click that link, sign up for our e-list, and you'll get the information when sign up for that is made available. You can also sign up for things like free and reduced price tickets through our partnerships, or any of the other information and classes we have through the education department at DSM. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and specifically to Jin-Ya and Nadia and Latrice for all of your amazing voices. Just truly invaluable to get to hear from you all tonight. And looking forward to seeing everyone soon. Hopefully when the music hall, well, the music hall is reopening, not hopefully. Hopefully we'll see you there in the soon future. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Great night.
You too.
This was